Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Clark, and this is the first episode, shall we say, of Inside Town Hall with East Hampton Town Councilperson Jeffrey Bragman. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, Michael, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Nice to be here. Virtually, that is.
Yeah. Jeff, we've known each other for a while, and you are no stranger to LTV. You were involved with a call-in show back in the late 80s with then Town Supervisor Tony Bullock.
I sure was.
Yeah. And
it just shows you, I've been talking about government issues for, 30 years? I'm talking to anybody that would listen, but I've seen clips of that show.
Well, we have a captured audience now, so it's but as you know, we resurrected that show's format recently, with a show called Ask the Supervisor here on Channel 22. And
I want to get some clips of mine up from the good old days, but
maybe we'll throw some in here, Jeff. We could surprise you.
Recognize me.
We could surprise you. Shows, but like this, that Ask the Supervisor in this show, focusing on the government, more importantly, the people in the government. They're critical these days. One of the issues that has been front and center for the last year or so is how do we gain a better understanding of government at all levels? And you came up with the Inside Town Hall for a focus on the local level, which is where we need to start. So why don't you explain to our viewers what the goal is?
It was fun talking about it and thinking about it, but it occurs to me that we have some folks that watch every town board meeting. They're really board watchers, and they really get what's going on. They know all the details and all the nuance. But for people who just tune in occasionally, it's very difficult to sort of penetrate what's going on because the issues continue over time and information is added along the way that they may not have seen. And also it's not completely free. The dialogue is not completely free flowing because they're presentations. And I just thought getting on LTV would give us a chance to talk more conversationally about some of the things that are happening and have happened. And I thought for the first show we could go back to a little bit to the beginning of when I first got on town board and was dealing with some issues over in Wainscott that turned out to be fairly serious. But
being the LTV, we live in Wainscott. That's a great place to start. And so if I remember correctly, I think when you first came on, when you first voted in, there was quite an issue with the water here in Wainscott. Yeah. Wasn't it the first thing that was thrown in?
Yeah, it was a very serious issue, actually, and pretty unexpected. We knew about it just before we got in office, how bad it was. But, Wainscott's water was contaminated with these chemicals, these man-made chemicals called PFOs. And the Department of Environmental Conservation became very concerned about them in 2017. I believe it was in October, if I'm not mistaken. And they sent around a questionnaire to every municipality that had an airport or was near an airport because the chemicals were associated with a material that was used in firefighting at the airport. So when we came on, by the time January of 2018 rolled around, I knew we had a major problem there. And it did turn out that we had contamination in many of the wells in Wainscott. So we had to figure out what to do about it. And, the obvious answer was that, first of all, I had to do a quick, study on PFOs were called emerging contaminants. They've been around a long time. They're in pots and pans that use Teflon. They're really widely used. They're even in dental floss. There's some dental floss products that had Teflon in it, and they are. I'm going to say the brand name. Glide Dental Floss is one of those brands that had these PFOs in it. So I think we found out fairly quickly. We knew that we were going to have to bring in public water to Wainscott, but first there was a lot of testing we had to do because we had to figure out, what the area was that was affected, and it turned out to be a pretty large area, in fact. And what was a surprise to me, we worked very well together as a town board. I was on phone calls almost every week with all the levels of government, including, I have to give a shout out to Fred Thiel, who was really just a terrific contact, to get us right through all the levels of government. And, so we got that underway, pretty quickly. But in the meantime, we were giving Wayne Scott residents bottled water. And I was getting a lot of feedback about that. It was not an adequate solution while they waited for public water. And, we had some senior citizens, they couldn't lift the bottles. I had people saying, I got dogs drinking the water, and we're bathing and showering in the water. And as I looked at it and researched it, which I did pretty carefully, it did look like it would pose a threat under those circumstances. The thing that's strange about these chemicals is they have a very tight bond. The strongest bond in organic chemistry is carbon and fluorine, and that you can't break that apart, and that tends to exclude water, and it smothers fires. That's why it's good in firefighting foam. But it also means it lasts forever. Literally, these are forever chemicals. They'll probably outlast the human race. And we all have them in our bloodstreams. And the problem is they interrupt our hormonal systems. And so they're very dangerous at very, very minute quantities. They're measured in parts per trillion, not parts per billion like usual. So I wanted to get a solution, an interim solution in place that would protect people, and let them not rely on bottled water. And that became, that was a kind of a difficult task to figure out, because they were emerging contaminants. It wasn't really clear what would work. But eventually, I went to the town board and I said, I want to research this, and I'm going to research it. I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask us to put some money on the table to provide this kind of water filtration. And in fact, that's what I wound up doing, because eventually we did get public water in, but it took it's not only a question of getting the water mains in, you've then got to attach, your own private system to the main. So by the time they're done, it's really like 1.5 to 2 years. And that's an awfully long time to be bathing and showering in contaminated water. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but I did finally figure it out, and I brought it back to the town board. And I did get some pushback on it. I mean, this is the nature of the town board. People, want to think things through. There's disagreement, and I learned. It was really the first time I learned that I really needed to be able to speak up and speak out clearly and kind of stick to my guns to get something done. And I think that's, important. And an important part of it was, being candid with the public and, letting them in to know what the issue was. And I think, I was successful because I was the liaison to Wayne Scott, so I could talk to the people in Wayne Scott. But it was an early lesson for me in something I've always thought was important, and that is that, local government really is a tool or a mechanism to help people when they're in trouble. And there are times we really do have to jump in. I mean, there are times we're the only people that can jump in. And this was certainly a problem that only the government could handle. There are other times when, we have an affluent community and we can get help, and I think that's great. At the same time, I really feel that the local government has a responsibility to act even when we've got people contributing and helping and fundraising and doing all that kind of work, because it demonstrates a commitment to the people that elected us, that we're really, that we've got skin in the game.
Right.
And, the issue has come up again, that kind of issue about what our role should be, did come up again fairly recently during the pandemic when we were talking about the food pantries, actually.
So where does it stand now, Jeff?
Well, what happened is the outcome was that I took some doing, but I was able to persuade the town board. I had to do some legal research, actually. We have a rule in the state of New York that you can't give gifts to private people. It's an anti-corruption law. It makes sense. Everybody can understand why we would have that. They don't want governments giving personal gifts to people. It would be a road toward corruption. So that was the objection that was raised by, the supervisor and some of the planning board members. And I did some research on it. And uh, unhappily, another community had the problem. It's called Hoosick Falls, upstate. And they went through the same issue and had the issue analyzed by, I think it was the comptroller. And they issued an opinion, which is, again, it's a common sense opinion. It's like you can give help to private people when the obvious purpose is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community. So I found that decision and was able to present it to the town board and convince them to declare an emergency and set up a fund. I think it was $300,000 to purchase these systems for people that wanted to do it. And I think Wayne Scott appreciated that extra effort, and I'm happy I did it, because I felt like if it had been me, I wouldn't be too comfortable bathing and showering in this water, or
Right.
frankly, even giving it to my dogs, or using it in washing, and you just don't know where it can affect you.
Well,
So
I'm just glad. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm glad you shared the information about the dental floss, because now we have an answer for, because one of the only things that dentists need to do is to be able to say you don't floss enough when you go to the dentist. That's how you get the degree.
yeah, I
So
know.
now you can. Well, here's why I'm not flossing, because
Yeah.
of all
Well,
these chemicals.
oh, I gave you an excuse.
Yes,
Don't tell
you
your
gave,
dentist. Don't blame me.
you gave a really good excuse, and I certainly don't mean to make light of the situation.
Yeah,
But
it was in a lot of products.
yeah,
It was spread all over the place. It's also used in Scotchgard, but the evidence in Wainscott is pretty clear that it comes from this firefighting foam. And actually, the town board did know, this is the prior town board, they were aware of the fact that we had some episodes at the airport where they used this firefighting foam. We had a plane crash, nobody was seriously hurt, and we had a fuel truck fire, and we had a couple of mass casualty drills where they used it. And so we had reason to be on the alert about it. And I really have a lot of thanks to give to the DEC for jumping right on it.
right.
But government is, and we did get to work right away on the public water, and that is definitely worthy of recognition. The water, in-home water filtration was a little bit more of a rocky road for me to navigate with the board, but I eventually did get the majority of the board to agree with me. So it was worth working it through with them.
So a lot of things happen here, right? I mean, you're basically thrown into this water situation at the first time in government. And I don't know, Jeff. Like I said, I've known you for a lot of years, and our kids went to school together. But that's life in a small town, right?
Yeah.
But I always wonder why people go into politics. What drives them to do that? Because there's a lot of negatives. I mean, at least from my perspective, there's a lot of negatives, and but you had to have learned so much in that that first situation. Learn so much about politics, right? You go in thinking and then
True. Yeah, I think I have a good handle on policy, but the nuts and bolts of like who gets the resolution and who pays the money, and also how to wrangle, your members to get on board. There's a little bit of a learning curve there, but I have to say, I'm happy to get that question. Why go into politics? Because, I have done a lot of thinking about it. And the simplest answer that I've repeated a lot is, basically to me, East Hampton it's not a brand name. It's not a reality TV show, and it's never been this, vacation land called the Hamptons. It's my home.
Right.
And because it's my home, I want to protect it. And that's my first impulse for being in politics. And, I had a long career in law where I learned to listen to local people, because I was often fighting in favor of strict environmental regulations. We'd go in and, make sure that the law was fairly applied as it should be. And I learned, I learned to trust local people's knowledge. I remember Stuart Vorpal in particular. It stands out in my mind. Some of the people who have been around longer will remember Stuart. And at one point, he got arrested by the DEC for fishing for stripers, I believe, and they seized, his catch. And we had a big town board meeting, and I came in. I was all prepared and had notes, and I made a statement. And at the end, Stuart just stood up and said, "I don't think the DEC has any right to tell me as a trustee that I can't fish in the waters when I got permission from the King of England in 16, whatever it was, 40." And I went, damn, that makes total sense. And he rocked the room, and I was like, he may have gone to law school, but he knows what he's talking about.
Right.
You know what? He won. He won his case.
Yeah, and sometimes it's the simple things, right? All he's pointing out.
Yeah. So I have to tell you that one thing I do enjoy, everybody asks me like, oh, what's it like to deal with all the people that come up to you and they're always arguing with you, and they're asking you hard questions and getting grumpy. And I mean this. I know there are a couple of clunkers, every walk of life, there are a couple of clunkers, but by and large, I've enjoyed my encountering people of the public, because what I've learned is they really just want you to listen. People really just want to know that you've heard them. I think they're willing to let you process what they say and think about it. And I think if they see that you make a deliberative decision, they're fine with it. They can even accept you going against them. And I've had that happen to me. And I find that was a real revelation to me. And I've translated that into like a mantra that I say to myself, which is lead by listening. Lead by listening. And, I think those are the two components, the important components of, being an elected official. And I don't mistake me. I don't think I'm the president of the United States. I know we're a small town and it's a small job. But, there are two components to it. But I think the bigger one is listening first, thinking things through, and then leading. Then when you lead, you're doing the right thing by people. And in general, maybe I'm a little bit, over-focused on the idea that we take our time and follow through on process. But, it's partly my legal training, and it's just partly my dealings with the public. I just think you get better decisions when you think things through. If you don't, it reminds me of something I used to say to my son when he was a kid, like, don't be the kid that goes, ready, fire, aim.
Right.
Think first, okay?
Yeah. Well, the one thing I will respectfully disagree is that when you said it's a small town and a small job, it's a small town and it's a big job.
Yeah.
And I say that about all politicians and public servants, really, because you don't have the benefit of being on a federal level and being able to hide behind that. You go to IGA, man, you run into your people. There's no place to hide here. So I think it's a tough job, and I respect all of you for doing that. But what kind of, if you had to categorize yourself, right? What kind of public servant are you? Like what type of I don't mean just a Democrat or Republican, something like that, but like, what's your goal as a public servant, do you think?
I can tell you, and it's going to sound corny, I think, but I'm going to say it anyway. I ran for office because I got so tired of hearing sort of this homogenized, focus group tested speech where they speak much and say nothing. So I actually ran because I wanted to try out something new, which was candor. I really believe in being candid with people. And it's partly my experience as a lawyer, because, everybody is always, lawyers, the bad mouthing that you hear about lawyers is, oh, they twist the truth and they don't tell you anything straight. My answer is always, if you don't understand your lawyer and what he's saying, you need a new lawyer. So, I believe in speaking the truth And I believe in clarity. I really, and so there are times that I try to inject that into town board meetings and explain, like, what an acronym means, or just generally what it is we're working on in terms that people can understand. Because I welcome the public participation. Honestly, I think people think that we should have all the answers, and I think we can come to the answers, but we need the input of the public. We need to listen to the public. And in many ways, I think the public leads us. We make, the ultimate policy decisions. It's not, well, you don't just, put your finger in the wind and see which way it's blowing. We make a decision. But in many ways, they offer us a lot of good ideas that come from the ground up. And I really actually believe that change comes from the ground up, not the top down. But in order to have it happen, you got to listen. And that's where I'm at. Now, that doesn't mean I always agree, with whatever the majority opinion is. It's two components. They're sometimes in tension with each other. But if I'm different in any way from other folks in political life, it's that I want to speak clearly so I can be understood. I will listen. I do my best to handle the email and get back to people. And you're right. There is a big load of work that you have to deal with, and a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
And you know what? Occasionally, there are things that cut through it, and you really have to act quickly. And I know about another episode that happened which is the dust storms in Amagansett, because your son runs the store. Give me the name of it again. I go there all the time to buy what I buy.
Oh, at Inner Sleeve, yeah, at Inner Sleeve Records, and we had Crossroads Music right there. Yeah. And I remember that because you would come in to buy your set of strings for your guitar, and
I still do.
And yeah, and it was amazing. Like, we had to. I remember when that happened. Like, all the windows were closed, and somehow all the dust got into the store on the guitars, and it was on everything. We had to clean the whole store out, and
it penetrated everything. It was like a powder. And I have to tell you, one store closed. The local school couldn't let kids out to recess. The library was in trouble. And I was on the agriculture committee, not a committee that you would expect to be managing crises, but it really was. And I have to say, the members of that committee worked with me, deserve a lot of credit. They really ran through it. I came up with some law to prevent, farm soils from being blown off site, either by requiring cover crops, or there are other mechanisms you can use. You can throw straw on it. And there was some other stuff. And they really helped come up with a solution for it. And again, there was a little bit of, pushback from the town board. There was, some comments that, we don't want to throw farmers in jail, because the original draft had the penalties written in, and one of them was going to jail, which would never happen. And we immediately took it out. But, that was another instance where, nobody could fix that problem unless there was, the government stepped in to act. And I was really happy to be in a position to do that. Got a law, and we can stop it from happening again.
Yeah, that was really, I just remember coming into work the one morning, I was like, what the heck? I had no idea, like, what it even was, you know what I mean? It wasn't until someone actually, I was perplexed.
It looked like fog. It looked like fog had settled down over Amagansett. It was crazy.
It is.
I'll tell you one thing. It's probably the only time in history that there was a crowd in town hall at the agriculture committee. A crowd of neighbors came in, and they were upset. I mean, they had kids who had asthma that couldn't go out and were having problems. So it was a serious problem, and I was really happy. Again, there was a little, bit of a battle that happened at the town board level, but I was really happy to be able to manage and get a majority, and the law that I found and modified, was enacted. And so we've solved that problem. And I like that. I mean, I like, you can see the direct connection between the government and the people that really it belongs to.
Now, Jeff, we have just a couple of minutes left, maybe about 2.5 minutes. If we can go back to Wayne Scott for a moment, if you don't mind, what else what are the big issues are in this community? I'm kind of chunking it out here, like, so in Waynescott, I mean, obviously the airport, but there's a whole show on the airport, right?
Yeah, I think there's a whole show really on the airport. There's probably a whole show on the wind farm, which is very controversial, and their effort, the effort on some people that lived in Waynescott to form an incorporated village. Those are big issues.
Yep.
Waynescott had also very concerned about protecting the views that we created when we bought properties using public monies. That's something that I was able, thanks to having some legal training, to go through the town code carefully and make really sort of very small adjustments that made it clear that any board reviewing an application for any kind of construction or architecture had the right to take into consideration nearby properties with preserved views to make sure that whatever was planned didn't infringe on those views. So I thought that was very constructive, and it became part of our computerized system in town hall, where we identified the properties and got another layer on our GIS system so that they could be identified, inspected, and protected. So that was, and Waynescott has had more than its share of issues.
Yeah.
In the 30 seconds left, there's not time to go into all the other stuff.
Well, that's okay. It's a good segue into the next show for sure.
Right. Okay.
We'll just
figure out what we're going to talk about then.
Yeah. So why don't you wrap it up, Jeff? We got about 45 seconds here. You can close it out.
All I can say is I'm just happy to be able to have, as you know, since 1985, I've been talking town board politics, sometimes on air, sometimes off, and it's just pleasant to have a setting where we can have more of a discussion that's calm, and that's what I'm hoping we can do on the next couple of shows.
Great. Okay, folks, thank you very much. Thank you, Jeff. I'll see you next time, and
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Until then, be well.
A lot of fun.